Hey, what's up, Printhouse? It's Bruce from Printavo, Simple Shop Management Software. Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Bruce from Printavo. We got our co-host, Stephen Farrick, and our very special guest today, Kyler Moppert out of Surcee Designs.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We've been talking for the last 10 minutes.
We've been talking.
We had
I'm
to
not going to
pause-
edit that.
We had to pause
reverse.
the podcast to do the intro.
Okay, wait. So how did you guys meet again? It was Fort Worth, or was it before?
It was OnlyFans, wasn't it?
That wasn't out yet. No, not that
it
one.
Must have been Tinder.
Yeah.
Back then.
You just don't want to tell everyone we were playing video games. It was the Clubhouse app, no?
Yeah, I think that must have. There's just so many guys.
Yeah.
You know,
What?
it's hard to.
So, Kyler, run it back. I don't remember you, but I guess you do.
Perfect. I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to be a special guest. So what happened was I started my company in 2019, and I was looking to expand. And so I'm over in Madison, Mississippi, and the closest ISS show at the time was in Dallas. I think it was like September 24th, 29th, something like that. And I was seriously considering. I went there for two reasons. I wanted to get into a larger embroidery machine because I had two at the time, and I wanted a big 6-head and possibly a 10-head. And so I wanted to see the difference between Barrett and Tajima and SWF. But also, I think, because I'm not a screen printing shop, and we'll talk more about that later, but I thought about getting into it. And so I was looking at MHM, M&R, and then I made it over to the ROC. Is that right? ROQ? How do you say it? ROC?
Uh-huh.
And then y'all were right next to them. And Steven spent the better part of couple of minutes telling me, if you're not in screen printing, just find a good contractor and outsource it until you have enough money to where you actually want to get into it, which was some great advice. I appreciate it. Of course, at the time, I just thought you didn't want me to, be a competitor maybe, but
no, I legitimately felt bad. I was like,
Yeah.
And you bought Printavo because of it, I think, right?
Well, I bought Printavo because I was growing and I needed something to help me manage that.
Okay, but it wasn't because I gave you good life advice. All right, fair enough.
No, it wasn't because I liked you.
Okay.
It was you happened to be there, and Printavo was good. Those were mutually exclusive.
Totally.
Yeah.
So sorry, Rock, for losing the sale. Sorry, Bruce, for having Kyler there at the same time.
Well, to be honest, I'm really glad I didn't get into it because I have actually done a bunch of contract jobs through other shops, and that just fits my business much better. I'm not a screen printer, it's a trade, and that's not something I'm passionate about.
That's a pretty responsible thing for a young, ambitious entrepreneur to do at a trade show, is resist the urge, right? Like,
yeah,
like I want something, I'm gonna go get it. When it's in your head, you're like, get it, right? What
were you doing before?
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so a little bit of my background is I don't have an apparel background whatsoever as far as like custom apparel or decorating or anything like that. My whole background is in, boring as it sounds, has been corporate business. I've been director of a large electrical company. I worked for a company called Fastenal for 10 years, and I was a district manager for them for a long time. Ultimately, the way I got into this was since 2015, I've owned an outdoor brand that's based around bow hunting. And Stephen, I come up and hunt near you once a year in Illinois. I was selling a lot of apparel, t-shirts, but mainly hats. Over a few years, when you cycle through vendors, you start to realize that the same problems from customer service, quality, or price they exist in a lot of different shops. I haven't found a perfect shop yet, so
Besides yourself.
I'm still trying to build that perfect shop. And what I found was lacking. This isn't like trying to kiss y'all's ass or anything, because I do think Printavo is great, but I was actually looking for more transparency. I realized like that was the thing that I was missing on the customer side was, where's my stuff? When's it being made? Has it shipped? When are you going to bill my credit card? Just basic things about your order that I think we all agree are like minimum expectations now. When I was a customer 6 years ago, it was just like you put an order in and it was like radio silence for 3 or 4 weeks until something showed up at your house.
Jesus, take the wheel. Yeah.
And that's not a fun way to run a business. Because I've got 27 shops in Louisiana that carry my merchandise, so I don't even know when it's arriving. I don't know when it's coming in. The other thing that happened was, let's say I wanted 3 different brands of hats: Richardson, Pacific, and say Outdoor Cap. Okay. Well, I would have to go to each one of them individually And if I wanted uniformity between all three of them, they would all come back looking different. And so ultimately, I wanted to get into these leather patch markets. Like, I know I got one within reach here, like this. Bruce, I sent you one, but like this is what we make, right? This is a private jet company that I do a lot of business for. It's got this cool leather patch on the back side of it, right? Your jet is ready. And so this is what I wanted to make for myself essentially, and I just dove headfirst into it. And this was while I was working. I had been relocated by a company that I loathed. It was a fantastic promotion opportunity at the world's worst company, and I needed to get out of there. And so I bought the sewing machine to do this. I bought the laser to do it, and just figured it out. And within, kind of crazy, but within 2 months, I had replaced my salary, and I had so much residual business that I could depend on that I gave them a month's notice, and 3 months later I quit on August 16th, and I met you guys on September 25th, 26th, whatever that was, a month later. I was 1 month in to doing this full time when we met, and I was operating in QuickBooks up until that point. And that's a nightmare in and of itself. QuickBooks is barely an invoicing software if you need it to be, and it's an even worse production management software.
Bruce actually loves QuickBooks.
Oh yeah?
Bruce loves QuickBooks.
You're making the hair stand up on my arm.
So I didn't go to the show to walk away with the software. I wanted to check out embroidery machines and then like give a little more thought into screen printing. And I left there like canceling screen printing out of my head, and I was like, I've got to get the Printavo stuff, and it's been fantastic ever since.
Wait, Kyler. So I'm very curious about that step. Because that short sentence, though, is something that a lot of shops will expand into. Not just screen printing, but going from screen printing to embroidery or to, vehicle wraps or what, like all these kind of neighboring spaces to just bring in sales. Go through all that. I mean, thinking about it, pricing it out, talking to everybody, what it meant for the business.
I'm a little different in the fact that I'm not romantic about what I do, okay? I don't think that embroidery machines are sexy. I don't think that lasers are cool. I don't think that a sewing machine is even something I want other people in my personal life to know that I can operate and run well. Okay, what I do, I don't consider a trade. And what I mean by that is I think, y'all tell me if I'm wrong here, I think what happens a lot of times is you have screen printers that really love screen printing that hope people buy shirts. Am I wrong there? Is that kind of an approach sometimes where sometimes you're in love with the process and then hope you can make money at it later? I saw an opportunity to be a premium headwear decorator. I want to offer all the ways in which I can decorate a hat, and we're going to do it very well, and we're going to do it in a short time period at good pricing, and we're going to give you a premium product that you could resell if you so choose to. But I never went to it from, man, I really love embroidery. That wasn't my approach. My approach was, I really love custom hats. Embroidery has to be a part of that. I really love leather patch hats. I need lasers. I really love other ways to decorate. And so I used the opportunity as a motivator rather than the method. If that makes sense.
It's more sales driven versus
very much
art of it driven.
Right.
But very cold. I hate to say that.
No,
neither's wrong. I mean, neither's wrong at all. There's a lot of people that are just like, they love the art of it, and that's what they're trying to always perfect and be in doing.
But I think, Kyler, something you brought up there is like, I love hats. That's what I'm going into, and I'm going to be laser focused on that. Right. And
ooh, nice pun.
Right.
Nice.
Oh, I didn't even try that one. Wow, that was good. But I think there's a lot to say there, because most of the time, like if I look at my business, we started with one press, and then I moved to another press, and then a DTG, and then added embroidery, and then a sign print, and then this. And so we've gone like this way, whereas you've actually narrowed your focus, right? But your opportunity horizon actually like widened because you actually like really scoped in on something and became an expert in it. Tell us about that.
So the way that I got into hats and headwear, it stems from sales opportunity, and it almost stems from, I hate to say a pitch, but I'll tell y'all some statistics of hats versus other types of apparel. First of all, a hat is the only wearable item on the planet that you can wear multiple days, weeks, and months in a row, day after day after day, and nobody looks at you sideways at it.
Except for your Printavo shirt if you're Bruce Ackerman.
Or sometimes jeans at the trade show.
Jeans. Eventually,
They
people
stink.
figure out that it's the same pair of jeans. Like, it might take 2 weeks, right?
They get stinky.
But eventually, everybody, because like that coffee stain from last Tuesday is still there this Friday, and like, hey Bruce, everything okay at home? You know, like you need to wash them. Like, but still, a hat is the only thing that is typically a man's accessory. It's not all about men and women, but typically men will wear the same hat over and over and over and over. And so, from a sales point of view, if we're talking about ROI, if I want to talk to a customer on they want to spend $1,000 and they want to get a certain number of hats, or they want to get a lot of really nice hats, then the reason why I would suggest that they go with hats over other forms of marketing or advertising wearable products is a hat's wearable every single day. The nicer a hat is, the more guaranteed the people you give it to will wear it every single day. And as long as it's following the current trends, and it also, this is an important aspect, and it's also not a billboard, meaning it doesn't have your phone number on it. It doesn't have your email or your web address on it. It doesn't have like all these other anecdotal add-ons that only make a hat busier. When it's clean and crisp and it's, you know, real leather and it looks good from all angles. This, nowhere on this does it have a phone number. Nowhere on this does it have a website, because we live in a time today where if you want to rent a jet, you're going to type in Nicholas Air in Google, you know, and you're going to hit call now. And so when you
Are you hoping they send you? Are you hoping you're like trying to get some?
I'll trade you hats for.
Yeah, are you trying to
riding
trade
the private
out?
jet.
How many hats would it take to trade out for a jet?
They've become good friends
Oh,
of mine,
okay.
but I still haven't flown anywhere with them yet.
Okay, hopefully
right?
they hear this and.
That's all right. There's
Hey,
birthdays.
this could
and
be our first Printavo.
private jet.
No, well
tour.
that too.
be.
Sponsored post. If you need a private jet, call Nicholas Air.
That's right, man.
Hey Nicholas, if you guys want to just, we got an airfield down there. I only fly Nicholas. How about that?
That's right.
We got to get to Long Beach in April.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All right, Kyler,
There you go.
keep going. Sorry.
So hats, from an ROI standpoint, hats put off about the greatest return on investment because of how often they can be worn and also the number of the lifespan of the hat and the number of impressions it puts off. So the average lifespan of a hat is 10 months. So within that lifespan or within that time period, you're either going to lose it, destroy it, or it's going to be replaced because of a trend reason. Something else will become popular. And so if you order 100 hats, and you've got 6,000 impressions per hat, and I can pretty much guarantee you that 90 to 95% of all of them that you give away to specific people will be worn every day. You're looking at an impression of about 500 to 600,000 hats for $1,000. You know,
Kyler, how do you price that? Like, how are you breaking it down, or is it by decoration type on it, or size, or
yeah,
what?
I do have pricing based on, like, from a customer view, there's pricing based on how it's decorated. So I've got embroidery pricing, I've got leather patch pricing, we've got decking pricing, we've got woven patch pricing, embroidered patch pricing. Like, any way you want to decorate a hat falls into a different pricing category. But I think what you're asking me though is what kind of system do I have for markup or margin or whatnot?
Well, just figuring it out. I mean, people always are trying to figure out pricing of tees, but you know, I'm sure hats are fairly similar. Of you're always trying to figure out what your margin looks like at the end of the day and adjusting from there. Hopefully up.
So it is a high margin item. We make good margins on every hat that we do, and we make even better margins because we do everything in-house. When I say we make good margins just off the cost of the hat versus what we sell it for as a complete product, we've really perfected that whole in-between of production and laser and leather, and we have almost no waste. We get really good use out of our leather hides. We might lose 5 or 8% of a leather hide just because, you know, you get literally half a cow in, and you've got the leg shape and the neck, and it's not a square.
Do you think you're going
right?
to get into the hide business? Like maybe you could just cut that out and start making your own leather.
Have you ever seen that leather
Verticalized.
fade?
I went to a rodeo once
seen
in
a
Fort
video.
Worth,
It's-
and that's as close as I got to.
It's about the most disgusting thing on the planet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I also learned that
Canning.
there's all kinds of different qualities of leather.
Kyler, one time Bruce
It's not
went
just you're
fishing.
buying leather.
One time Bruce went fishing, and he didn't want to touch the fish, so he used a rock.
Use the rock.
to like
Nice.
to unhook the fish.
I would say this is more of a skill than it
it was like a
avoiding
bluegill
the
too.
fish.
He wouldn't touch
But
the fish.
you didn't actually tell him the other part where that I literally tossed the lure in, and 3 minutes later
Caught the
we
fish.
had, that was what, about 7 pound.
Was that
12
not
pound.
like the most? Was that not like the most badass thing ever? And like
It was awesome. I mean, that fish clearly though goes for the same hooks over and over. You know, the ones with the, like, you could see all the hooks in the mouth still.
Yeah.
But
Oh, they hang.
yeah, no,
they
it did
hanging
feel
out
good.
in the tall grass.
I did think I had a new career going for a minute until I was like, this thing
I'll
was
do that to you.
squirming, and then anyway.
Bruce put it on a rock to throw it back in the water.
Well, I had to lay it down to like try to get, and then it calmed down. Then it pulled the hook out.
You should see Bruce trying to
But-
reclaim his screen.
You know, the spine, you know, sometimes are really sharp, and so that's why. And I didn't bring any
All the
gloves.
time,
I
actually.
didn't bring my fish glove. Yeah,
Bruce has a fish glove.
You left your classic mistake, Bruce. You left your fish glove at home. It's in your other jacket.
I know, that's exactly what happened. Anyway, it was a thing, but hey, that was 5 minutes flat. I was ready to go on ESPN right after.
Yeah.
Da-na-na, da-na-na.
Bass Pros,
Bruce Ackerman catches fish.
top 10 plays.
Stick to software, Bruce. But
So all right, let's get back on track about pricing and all that stuff. So
Yes.
what first thing is I think that pricing off of your costs is a mistake, because you very often are undervaluing yourself in the market. And so there's only two ways to raise margins in your business. You either sell it for more or you buy it for less. Those are the only two ways to make more money on a sale. And so if you can, hypothetically, okay, I just got with Richardson, we just hit a pretty big spend number with them. So I got a 15% discount off of what I buy their product blank for. I'm not changing my pricing. I've earned that extra 15% in cost of goods being lower, and now my margins get better as a total product to my customer. But I have had literally two conversations with customers where they didn't like my pricing and said, I'm going elsewhere. And one of them went somewhere else that was cheaper than me. Like that was their business model, was to be less expensive, which is a horrible business model.
right.
If your business model is to be the cheapest, start finding, like, you might as well go ahead and start looking for a bankruptcy lawyer,
Yeah.
because you're not going to be in business forever.
So-
that's not a sustainable model.
So Kyler, you know, you talk about being an expert in this, and the way you pitch that right there, like, it's probably the best I've ever heard a hat been pitched before, right? You know, no one's going to be listening this far on the podcast, so don't worry.
Probably not.
But, you know, the way you talk about it and you sell it, we know you're an expert about it. And because of that, you can sell it for a lot more. Talk to us about how, like, do you even do embroidery outside of patches, or are you still, like, very into patches?
No, we do. I have a 6-head Barrett-in, and then I have 2 single-head machines that are 10 needles. So this is what's a big difference between, like, my shop and a regular print shop. From what I see, when I see y'all do tours, because I watch those. I don't know if you know anybody else's watches them, but I watch your shop tours. So you've got at least one person
On
that-
OnlyFans.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
OnlyFans, Printavo, shop tours. And I'm always impressed with how openly people talk about their equipment, and I know why. It's because that effing thing costs $100,000. That's a pretty high barrier to entry. If you want to get into like a 16 pallet M&R with a XT9000 dryer, I'm just making stuff up, you're looking at a big chunk of change. And so for me, a lot of the equipment that I buy is actually, it's 20 and 30 years old, and it's been refurbished, not the lasers, but the sewing machines, and they're very specialized, and I have them built to a specific way. I don't really discuss. I have on my Instagram, if you click on my bio, in asterisks right here, it says, no, we won't tell you what machines we use, because I'll show you my Barrett-in, because it's a $50,000 machine, and like if you want to buy a $50,000 machine, go ahead. But Barrett-in is the best embroidery machine that there is. Just like I'm sure everybody has their strong feelings about the best screen printing machine, and they can't wait to put it in every Instagram video that they post. I'm going to do that with my Barrett-in, but I'm not going to do that with my other equipment. In fact, I've had to literally tape over names and model numbers of stuff, because I've had people come to my shop with intentions of trying to figure out what it is I use so that they can start doing it. And I'm not cool with that.
Yeah. And that's your trade secret. You know, trade secrets are that's what makes you special, right?
One of the things, yeah.
Yeah. Have you even ventured into just normal embroidery, just like doing polos and things like that? Or are you just,
I hate flats. I refuse to do flats.
that's funny.
No, I despise it. I absolutely despise it. So what's actually funny to me about like the feelings of the industry in general is a lot of people hate hats.
Yeah.
They despise hats. To me, the setup and the hooping of a hat is exponentially faster than the setup and the hooping of a shirt. And even though there's probably a higher resale price in me doing a polo, I can't, like, if I buy a polo, I don't know, from Sanmar and it costs $17. Sanmar has a list price that anybody can see. You don't have to have an account. So that $17 polo, my cost might be $28 resale. Is what they have it as. Like anybody could buy for that with no wholesale account. So then I've got to tack embroidery on top of that. At absolute best, I'm looking at about 40 or 50% margin on that sale. And I can get way better than that on headwear.
Gotcha.
And I just would rather stick into my headwear lane because like there's another thing we do also that I never advertise and I never talk about, I only do it for a few people, is on our lasers, I have rotaries and we'll do Yeti cups and tumblers and we can do all that stuff. But that's not how I want to make money. That is not the way that I want to drive revenue in my business. I want to be known as like the best headwear guy. If you want premium custom headwear, call Surcee Designs.
What is the margin that you try to target on that average order size?
Like I said, I own everything except for actually making the leather. We do everything in-house, so I'm not outsourcing anything. I'm able, on a turnkey hat order, depending on how many you order, is between 80 and I would say 55% would be the lowest that I make, would be 55%.
I think shops hearing that should caution because there's a misconception of percentages in printing.
Are you talking about markup versus margin?
Markup versus margin.
I'm talking about margin.
Right.
I'm not. This has been a preaching point of my entire career. It's embarrassing when I see people use markup and margin interchangeably. They're not the same thing. It's not to sound like an asshole, it's an ignorance to that side of the business, and it can destroy your business if you use it incorrectly.
Yeah, I had a customer once, and I was like, they were selling it on a merch store. They were going to make more money on a hoodie, meaning on every hoodie they were going to make $15, but on every t-shirt they were only going to make $7. Mm-hmm. But the percent margin on the hoodie was like 40%, and because that was a less percent than the t-shirt, they wouldn't do it. They're like, no, percent is too low. And I kind of just sat there. And what's funny is I started talking to Carson about it. And she's like, whoa, that messes with my head a lot. So I think this is like markup and margin mistakes. It happens all the time.
100% markup on something is 50% margin.
Right.
Right? Okay, so if you double the cost of something, half of the cost of your revenue is your cost of goods.
Right.
So like this is the best way that I can explain it because I've done that. I've talked about this for 12, 13 years in my career with dozens of salesmen, I've even had to explain this to heads of companies that don't know the difference between it. Markup is a tool. It is a literal multiplier of your cost. It is, if you want 100% markup, you're doubling your cost of goods. So it is cost of goods. Say if you want to sell something for 100% profit and it costs you $5, you sell it for $10. The margin is the percent of that revenue that is profit.
Yeah. There's also something in Profit First called real revenue. So
you've told me.
Yeah, you basically, because it's kind of inflated, right? If you're a contract shop and you throw out a revenue number, say you're a contract shop and you do $1 million, and I'm a direct-to-consumer shop and I do $1 million, the contract shop is actually a much bigger machine because they're not factoring in their cost of goods. Basically, it's negligible, right? And so,
sure.
Shops will get really up in arms about revenue numbers. And it's like, well, in the wintertime, you're going to do more revenue because you sell hoodies, right?
They're higher, more expensive items.
Yeah, and so what we've started doing actually is every month we look at total revenue minus our cost of goods, like actual blank materials. And that is what our revenue number is every month internally. That's what we have to work with on the business, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'll tell shops a lot is like, if you're getting into a new piece of equipment or something like that, like forget the shirt cost. What's the cost of running your business every single day? Have you ever calculated what your daily burn is? Like what it costs to keep the lights on?
I have. It to be honest, guys, it changes so frequently. Like we've grown so voraciously since the summertime that my expenses haven't risen that much and my revenue is growing immensely.
Right.
We're growing 15 to 30% every month. That's kind of right now. It would kind of be like trying to factor and judge the mile per gallon of a NASCAR running 200 miles an hour. Why are we being critical of this right now? Let's just keep this thing on the tracks.
Right.
As long as we're going up and to the right, I can do some back analytics of my business and factor it that way. But that's not something I use daily or even monthly. I look at my revenue numbers as a business. I look at my P&Ls, but I'm not that critical of my financials right now because I have to reinvest so frequently.
Right.
It eats up a lot of cash, just to keep that engine running. I'm not at a plateau point in expenses where I can expect my expenses here, but I can expect this out of my revenue.
Yeah.
Essentially, if this is my revenue, my expenses are growing like this.
Cool.
Wait, Steve, how do you use that number? Is that going to any calculations of other aspects?
Yeah. So if you look at your monthly expenses, not including your cost of goods sold, right? Because your cost of goods sold, that is that inflated number that's going to move the needle depending on what type of product you're selling.
Yep.
Right?
It's proportional.
Right. So I divide that number by 20 because that's how many working days there are in a month. And that's what I call my daily burn, meaning when I wake up every morning, I'm $7,000 in the hole.
Yeah.
Right. So and that's how we I wake up because you can't lay people off. You can't shut down for the day. If you shut down for the day, you still pay the power bills, right? If you have a day off, you're probably still paying salaries and things like that. You want to get paid every day. So taking those fixed costs and dividing them by how many working days there are shows you what your burn rate is, because it's also something that if you're not producing enough every day and you're not profitable day over day, that's why restaurants close, because it's such a tight margin business that it's arguably better to be closed than to open your doors, meaning you could actually do more damage by staying
less
open.
expensive.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I kind of tell some of my team members know, like, we start every day, $6 or $7,000 in the hole. Like, have we worked our way out of it, right? Are our presses, like, let's look at the gross profit on that press. Let's look at the profit on that press. Let's look at the margins on that promo order. Did we get past that $7,000 and what's left, right? And that's it. Now, from a profit first perspective, you should also build it backwards, right? So like profit, what is it? Expenses minus profit, And so it kind of trained me to think like backwards, more or less. Like, if I want to make this much, this is how much needs to be produced, or I need to reduce my expenses this much so that I can do that. And burn and churn and like that kind of thing. Bruce, can you talk about it from a tech standpoint? Like, you hear companies that are rapidly growing. Tell us about like what burn, like what run rate is, because I think run rate and burn is really important for printers right now, especially as we're like in a pretty uncertain time.
Yeah, I mean, very simply, like, at least in tech world, there's a lot of fundraising where companies are supposed to spend more than they bring in. And so then they're measuring their burn rate, which is just how much they're spending every single month. And then run rate is essentially how long we can run until we're out of complete cash. And you either close, or most of the times they try to raise more capital. The calculations get deeper around the customer. And so at least in tech, you'll want to look at things like lifetime value of the customer. Roughly over a year, what does this person bring in sales wise? And then you can roughly take your marketing costs and divide that over the number of customers there, and you can get the cost to acquire that customer.
Right.
And they say if you're around 5x the LTV, the lifetime value divided by the cost to acquire the customer, then you have something that you want to keep spending money on, right? So that way you say, holy cow, this channel really works, or what we're doing marketing wise really work. Now, a lot of shops I find don't really market yet until they get to a certain size, or, they do really want to push growth further than just word of mouth. But you have a profitable sales channel. It's literally like you're putting $1 in, you're getting 5 back out. So it's like, why not continue to do that? That's how we specifically also look at it as well.
Yeah,
and we didn't fundraise anything, so we definitely maintain a profitable model around it.
Right, and I think you have to think of your business as like, I feel like in our industry, we're inserting $1 in the slot machine, pulling it and hoping for the best. And if it aligns, sweet, we hit like 777s or whatever. But if you look at some of these other businesses, they figure out what their black box is, right? Like, what is their input-output machine, right? And Kyler, for you, it's hats. Like, it's hats and patches. That's it. And every dollar you feed in pulls money out. And that's why you hear some of these shops that are really crazy about like Facebook ads right now. They literally have it so calculated and dialed in because they know every dollar I spend in marketing gets me one sale online, right? And so, we've talked to Caleb and Jared and John Amato and those guys. It's interesting when you figure out what your niche is, when you figure out what your focus is, you actually have a lot of clarity that comes out of it, right? And if there's one thing that I'm taking away from today, it's like is narrowing your focus actually like opens your opportunity, and it increases your clarity because you have crystal clear vision of what you want to do, and you are going to be like like no one can touch you in that space.
That's my goal. That's my entire goal. Is I hope I never print a t-shirt in my life. I have no interest at standing at a table that has 100,000 other people standing at it, that even though they're across the United States, I would rather be at a table where there's 5 other people and I'm somewhere in that top 5. And that's the thing about what I do was I'm real big on like genuineness and originality, but that doesn't mean that you have to create something that nobody's ever seen before. You don't have to be a pioneer in that aspect. But what I was witnessing as a customer buying this product was, I was like, this sucks. There's gotta be a better way to get custom hats that look better, that there's a better process for the customer. And then I decided to dive head first into it. Another one, laser focus, diving head first, headwear. This is terrible. But I decided to go all in on that. And like I said, I have other ways that I make money. I'll do cups and we'll do shirts and polos for friends or jackets or whatever. But I don't advertise that stuff because I don't want to confuse my customer as to what our core competency is. Online.
Wait, Kyler, so what I find super interesting, right? I'm sure you looked at your finances. You had a roughly idea of what it costs. You flew to Dallas. You're at the show. Like, what was the big shift, though? Like, what was the aha moment of, okay, let's double down here instead of spread out horizontal?
First of all, I was by myself. I started this in my house, and I had one sewing machine, one laser, and I had eventually overtaken my garage, my dining room, and my office. And I had no more space left, and I was overloaded with orders. I needed help, but I needed more space. But also, I love my wife very much, but like, we're not meant to work next to each other all day. It's very important for my marriage that we spend like 8 or 10 hours apart. Like, there's an old country song that says like, how could I miss you if you never leave? And so I needed to get out of the house and have a space that was my own. So I rented a shop back in. It was the next month after I met you guys, like a couple weeks later, and I expanded. Way too much room for what I needed. It was totally empty. I've now outgrown that, and I rent a second shop next door to that now. But what the aha moment was, it's kind of like, have y'all ever heard the analogy of like what happens to the dog, or not the analogy, but the story of what happens to the dog that actually catches the car tire that he's been chasing? That's the oh shit moment. You got a dog that chases a car down the street all day. What happens when you actually latch onto that tire while it's moving? It's going to F you up pretty bad. And so I'm trying to figure out how to hold on to the tire and the car at the same time. And so for me, I've had this conversation a couple times in the last few weeks. I think we spend the first year at least of our business figuring out if it's sustainable and we can actually continue on with this. And once you gain that confidence in what you're doing, you go into like the next level of a business owner of like, how do I make it bigger? I think a lot of business owners and shop owners potentially, I think their problem is that they can't figure out how to expand beyond their own capacity themselves. Like delegation is one of my biggest strengths, is that I trust other people. Other people are going to ruin a lot of stuff. They're going to F up a lot of things before they start to get it right. But when you can depend on a lot of other people and grow, and you can fuel that growth with equipment, sales, marketing, and then adding more people, that is an equation. Kind of like Steven said, you put $1 in the machine, you get 4 back. There's an Instagram I follow
called Visualize Value. Bruce posted on the Printavo Instagram quite a bit. Jack Butcher's the guy that illustrates these things. And he says, like, the shiny object that you think is going to make you a quick buck is actually like the biggest distraction for you, right?
Sure.
And I think
Absolutely.
if we look at us in our industry, I mean, us alone, we're always like, what's the next thing we can get into to make more money? We're kind of chasing like, oh, did you hear that they're selling promo products? So now we're going to sell promo. Oh, did you hear that they're offering this? So now we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's always
a
thing.
And so I
Yeah.
think what's really interesting is, and maybe we can try and find the link to it, Bruce, is when you're constantly doing that, you're actually like sort of moving backwards every time because you're not mastering anything. But then when you get like really into something, you actually like, there's a point where you like exponentially really start to grow. And I look at, like Eric Solomon at Night Owl. Like if you follow Night Owl, you will know one thing. It's water based. It's extremely high quality, extremely complicated, but it's only water based, right?
And he's probably I don't know who that is, but I would imagine he's, if not the best, one of the best.
Like, and has become, like, and it's pretty cool to watch because, like you can teach it, you can sell it better. Now you're specialized in it. And I look at it in like any other practice, whether you're a doctor and like what doctor does every type of surgery, that's not a thing anymore, right? Like what engineer knows every type of coding, in any industry. And I think it's Mark Kudre that says like, your niches or whatever, in britches or whatever, but like get into your niches and get crazy good at them. And I think from a life standpoint, you will be so much happier along the way.
I'm a believer in niches and focusing on one thing and specializing and like, it's funny. You're like the third or fourth person that's called me an expert on hats, or I get customers. I'm like, do you want it like this or you want it like this? And I'll get a response back. Oh, I don't know. You're the expert. And I love it when people just give me leeway. Or we actually have a, do y'all remember the Staples button from like years ago on Cursor?
That was easy.
Yeah, that was easy. You hit the Staples button. So I have my graphic designer. I was like, make me a staple button that says make it cool. And so if I have a customer that is like locked up or he's like indecisive and he can't figure out what he wants, I'm like, I'll send him that picture and a text or sometimes through Printavo or message or whatever. And I'll just, if you don't want to think about it, just hit this button and I'll make it cool and it'll show up at your house and it'll be badass. And it'll probably be way cooler than anything you can think of telling me how to make it for you,
That's,
so
if
you trust me, hit the make it cool button.
That's pretty funny because like, and it's the ability to say no too, right? Like to not advertise the things you can do. Like, yeah, you can laser engrave Yetis, right? But even like Bruce, from you guys, like you have I hit you up with an idea once a day, sometimes twice a day. And so it's like, how do you deal with the distraction of ideas, right? Like Bruce, how do you do it? Because you have a roadmap, and then you have me in one ear, you've got probably Justin Moore in the other ear. You have someone going crazy on one of the Facebook forums, right? You have like the single shop person that like thinks this should be a Rolls Royce, or how do you? I think it's funny to watch. How do you narrow that? Because like it would keep me up at night with that much flying at you. Like I don't think Kyler and I have the same amount that hits our desk.
There's a few thousand shops, and I think more fortunately, people are more on the vocal side because they do want it to be better. That's pretty neat. I think though internally prioritization is the most important thing. And one thing that we did starting middle-ish of last year is just literally creating quarterly roadmaps that said, here's what we're doing, here's the theme, the high-level theme, and then here's what we're building to help achieve that theme. And then we stick to that, and we share it internally. Some customers, if they want to ask, we'll share it with them. And this is like what we're focused on completely on that quarter. And that helps reduce the back and forth of like the quick switching. Because like you said, like when something comes up and you just completely divert all this energy over to the left, I think as a company gets bigger, that becomes way, way more expensive. Literally, I mean, it's exactly what you said. It drags you backwards. It would drag us backwards if we constantly had to change course every week because of something that we saw. Now, not to say none of this is important. And honestly, I try to have like 3 to 5 conversations with shops every single week about how we can help more. And I get bummed out because it's like, gosh, we need so much more stuff, to really help make it easier for them to make progress in their business. But it has to be prioritized. I mean, there's just limited resources. There's limited engineering time. There's limited.
But I think also when you guys now, like if I looked at how you released features 3 years ago to how you release features
oh my gosh.
now.
It's so, with the new automations, super clean. I don't even think there's any bugs going out. The team is like legit. I mean, especially on the engineering side and success side and customer care, like everybody has stepped up to the next level. And I think the other thing that we did that helps is we interviewed for these skills that we were having problems with. Now, this isn't to say that we've nailed it, because we could always prioritize better, and everybody has their own
But now,
things,
Bruce, once you've created experts, right? Like I'm gonna pick on Mike for a second, who's your product manager, who's incredible, but like now that he's like laser focused on being an amazing product manager, now you can build out the product management team. It's not like you hired 3 product managers, right? And so I think there's something to be said about the way you deploy, or the way, like, it's a different company in the sense that you guys row together. And that's why every now iteration of it, like this automation, like mic drop, is changing the landscape of Printavo, like forever, right? In the same way that line item groups is, in the same way, like, and so I know we bug you about little things, but you guys, like, it's crazy to see like one ship actually really moving, and
but I think that's that traction book. I like
the one you didn't finish.
Like really,
Shirt Show started a book club
80%,
just to show you that Bruce can't finish a book.
How to finish a book.
Yeah,
I saw that. I think that's really cool. Actually,
I can't even read, so.
I mean, the thing is that like when you get super excited, about it at like a topic or like a manual or something you're setting up, and then you just start jumping in. You're like, I'll finish this later. That's exactly how it went. But so literally creating that roadmap in the KPIs and stuff that I said by the year end, this is where we want to be. How do we measure it? And then though, I think this was the turning point that helped move forward in that, is we revisit it every week almost. And like, where are we at with this? Are we still in line with this? If not, can we update it or whatever? Because before I created it, I think this was like early 2019, but never talked about it again.
And what Bruce is referring to are these level 10 meetings, basically in Traction. It's like, you're writing them down, you're storing them, you're revisiting them, and then there's an accountability to the group, right?
Bingo.
And so, it's something like Adam and I do it every Thursday, the two of us, because we're like, okay, let's visit our Traction board. And then we'll also be like, oof, distracted from there. Ah, crap, we didn't get that. All right, I will definitely get that done this way, because it's so hard as a business owner, right, to do the most important thing when it's supposed to be done. That is the hardest thing to do as a business, or is to take priority items and get them done as quickly as possible. And I think, Bruce, you and I will text sometime and be like, yeah, I didn't get anything done on the list today, right? Doing that too many days in a row is how you create kind of like this business that has dead ends, Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think it's so important for these shops that, like, Kyler, you say trusting people, right? Like, you sewing on a hat, like sewing on a sewing machine, yeah, you can do it, is now a waste of your time. And every time you have to sit down and sew, you are literally swapping, like, work that's supposed to grow and scale and automate the business with just busy work, right?
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do. Even
worse for me is when first of all, I thrive in chaos and 70 things rolling around in my head. I need it for like human validation. If I don't have enough going on, that's when I start feeling things are wrong. or things are not going well, if I don't have enough activity going on. So I don't get stressed out. I handle stress very well. I think it's something that everybody is in control of, how they feel about something or towards life or a business or whatever. Everything's within your control. But if I sit down and sew 60 hats, which I can sew about a hat a minute, so that's an hour worth of work. If I spend 1 hour sewing, I will come away with a to-do list in my head so long that it's impossible to work through. because sewing to me is okay, think of it like this. You ever get on the interstate and you've driven for like 25 minutes, you're thinking about something else, and then you don't remember what the last 30 miles look like? Like, you just don't remember that section of highway from, for a commute or whatever.
And you're like, make a Tesla Bruce joke.
It sounds like you don't have
Proceed.
to. You just give the ingredients and I can kind of combine
Abstain.
it from there. So anyway, it's kind of like that. Sewing to me is so mindless now, and I can do it accurately and well that my head is in other places, and it actually becomes unbearable for me to sew because I'm thinking about 70 other things that I don't usually have time to think about, But what y'all were talking about prioritizing, I think it's important to realize that, like, prioritizing, you can't just say that word. It's kind of like saying, like, oh, you should just go get a career to somebody that is unemployed.
Totally.
All right. So people that are good at prioritizing throw that around as if it's like just this thing you do. But there's people listening that are like, what the fuck are you talking about? How do you do that? And there are people that are lost in it. And so it reminds me of a comedian joke that says, like, kind of like what I said, a person with a job doesn't want to hear about your career. Okay? They only want to talk to other people that have jobs. Nobody with a career is going to gain any respect from somebody that has a job about how professional they are, how good they are at something. And so for me, prioritizing actually starts not with the importance of the things that I should do first. It starts with dismissing the things that are distractions and unimportant. I hit it from the backward side of it, where if you have 50 things to do, prioritizing to some people means find some mixture to get all 50 things done. To me, it means these bottom 25, there's not a time limit on it, there's not a deadline, there's not a due date. Yes, I need to change that light bulb in the corner, but that's not ahead of sales for today. And so some people, there's some people that confuse busyness with productivity, right? As long as they're moving, they feel like they're accomplishing something. That's oftentimes wrong. They also probably feel the same way about prioritizing, where prioritizing is just taking their to-do list and working through it line by line. That's their definition of it. To me, it's putting the least important stuff at the bottom and working from the bottom up to what's most important now. That's how I prioritize. That's what makes sense to me in my head. But I'm also the guy that if you ask me what 7 plus 6 is, I'm like, well, 6 is 1 more than 5, so I'll add 1 to 8, and then I'll add 8 plus 5. Like, that's how I do math. So I think kind of backwards in that sense also.
I was talking to my coach yesterday, like therapist coach, I don't know, something along in between the lines of it, and I was like, I'm struggling with productivity or prioritization or getting the most important thing done of the day, and he's like, that's okay, just accept it because that's how you got here.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's like, yeah, you're a business owner. Like, you got here because your priorities are sometimes chaotic, because you are taking some risks. So, like, it's okay if they don't necessarily get done, but at the same time, get yourself away from those, because that's taking you away from being your own chaotic, busy, whatever it is. I thought that was interesting because it was like accepting that, business owners are not crazy productive people. That's how we got here, right? Mm-hmm. We got here from distraction. Crazy tangents today, guys.
Well, let's kind of get it back on track. So one of the reasons that we talked about emailing and doing a podcast was the fact that I'm not a screen printer, and I use your shop software every single day. Is there a way to do screen share between us so I can kind of show you how I have things set up in our automations and whatnot?
I don't know if we can now, but we can record one at a point. We can do an offline recording of how an embroidery shop does it. Bruce, would that be?
Yeah, definitely. Let me wrap this one up here. And then we should definitely grab a time though.
Yeah, we should do it separately.
I'd like to see your.
Then we should do it separately so we can use them.
Because I had to delete nearly all the default statuses and stuff when I got it and like rebuild my own with the new workflow.
We should absolutely do a video just focused on that because I think it's so important on how an embroidery shop should use this, like light years. But
Let's do it. Let me wrap this up real quick
so
here.
Go for it, Bruce.
I'm going to record the other one too.
All right, go.
Thanks so much, Kyler, for joining us. We're actually going to do a part 2 for more embroidery focused shops in Printavo, but we'll release that one later actually to share it. I think that'll be really powerful. It's been awesome though. I really, really love the thoughts around diving deeper into the niche instead of moving out horizontally. Thank you again. We'll see you at the Future Fort Worth.
Yeah, thanks guys.
FFW.
I appreciate it. See you guys.